and we should remember that Israel will remain in control over Gaza. They changed what they had actually briefed the leaders and then unilaterally announced something different.
Everyone kept saying you have to accept Hamas's terms to withdraw everyone. The IDF needs to withdraw and Hamas can recover and also rehabilitate the strip. No way, that's not happening.
Well, we now have some clarity on what I personally consider a dirty trick that's being played by the Trump administration and the Israeli government when it comes to a possible peace deal or ceasefire to end the slaughter in Gaza. Now, I wanted desperately for the terms of a ceasefire to be accepted by both parties, for the killing to stop, for just an end to all this mindless, terrible violence. But we now have clarity from people who are in the know about what's actually going on here. So look, before we get to the details, I just want to draw your attention to a post on X that leads people who are actually informed on this issue to ask themselves a question. Is he lying or just stupid? So I bring you Noah Smith, who I think is like a writer on Substack or something, but for whatever reason, he shows up on my X feed all the time. So he writes, it's kind of grim watching the whole global pro-Palestine movement scream for war to continue. Now, I'm obviously wanting this war to end. And I personally haven't seen pro-Palestine people calling for the slaughter to continue. And so when he was asked, are pro-Palestinian people really calling for the genocide, ethnic cleansing, and apartheid to continue, though? Israel can stop anytime they choose, you know. And he just responds, they are calling for all that, yeah. Okay, well, Noah Smith, just as I go through the details of this story, ask yourself, and then we can decide in the end, is he lying or is he just stupid? So with that in mind, I want to get to why Noah Smith and anyone who thought that this peace deal was real actually happens to be wrong. It was not negotiated in good faith. And the person who's going to give us the information on this is Jeffrey Sachs. He is a public policy analyst. He has negotiated peace deals. He's an incredibly informed guy. I highly recommend you listen to all the content that he's involved in because I've learned a lot from him myself, including what the reality is of this peace deal. Let's take a look.
The administration, President Trump, briefed Arab leaders at the end of last week on this plan. They said, well, there are a number of things that are good with this. And then Trump met with Netanyahu and Ron Dermer, who is one of these forces of right-wing extremism in Israel, and he's an American-born advisor to Netanyahu, who was Israel's ambassador to the United States for a long time. He knows how to pull strings of American politicians, wherever those strings and however they arise. And they changed the plan as they met and basically rewrote key parts of what Trump had told the Arabs to say, oh yes, and we should remember that Israel will remain in control over Gaza. They changed what they had actually briefed the leaders and then unilaterally announced something different. And this is just now being disclosed in recent hours. This is so typical.
So when Noah Smith says that pro-Palestinian activists want the killing to continue, he's specifically referring to pro-Palestinian activists who saw right through this supposed peace deal. Now, I needed to know what the actual details were, and our media does a terrible job in helping us decipher, okay, what is the actual agreement here? But that clarity that we just got from Jeffrey Sachs is so important because I almost got fooled by this. Because when I saw that Arab leaders were like, you know what, this is an acceptable deal. Hamas should totally accept it. I was like, maybe, but there's something off. Because there's no way in hell Benjamin Netanyahu of all people would ever agree to a deal that would call for the removal of IDF soldiers from the Gaza Strip. There's no way. So like something wasn't making sense, and now we know what it is. So just to reiterate what we heard from Jeffrey Sachs, they essentially changed the peace deal after meeting with a guy named Ron Dermer in Israel. We'll get to him in just a minute. And they did so after getting the support of Arab leaders. Now, why did they do that? Well, this allows for Israel to say, look, this is a great peace deal because the Arab leaders accepted it, but they accepted the initial peace deal, at least the terms of the initial peace deal, before it was revised following Trump's negotiation or meeting with a guy named Ron Dermer in Israel. So when Trump meets with Dermer and changes the terms in a way that overwhelmingly benefits Israel and essentially crushes the possibility of a Palestinian state, well, obviously Hamas is going to deny that. They're gonna say, no, we want a two-state solution. We're not going to be okay with IDF soldiers occupying the Gaza Strip. When they reject the revised deal, at that point, Israel and the United States can basically point to that as the excuse for annihilating the Gaza Strip. Well, Hamas didn't accept the peace deal. No, they didn't accept the revised version that isn't being advertised right now by US corporate media. So I just think that's a really interesting detail that's missing from a lot of the reporting in the US. Now, who's Ron Dermer? You got a little taste of who he is based on the description you heard from Sachs, but he actually is the person who worked on Netanyahu's 2008 campaign for prime minister. And that was a successful campaign, by the way. So the following year in 2009, he was named Netanyahu's senior advisor, okay? And then the Jerusalem Post even said that Dermer, quote, runs much of the interference with the White House and is intimately involved in the diplomatic process with the Palestinians, if you want to call that diplomacy, and writes many of Netanyahu's speeches. Now remember, Netanyahu is in the Likud party, and the Likud party's founding charter indicated that the goal, the objective of the Likud party is to pursue the Greater Israel Project, which means no Palestinian state. No Palestinian state in Gaza, no Palestinian control in the West Bank. In 2011, Alison Hoffman over at Tablet magazine said that Dermer is Bibi's brain, quoting a longtime observer of Israeli politics as saying, if you look at Ron, you see Bibi. So that's the guy that advised Donald Trump on how to revise the peace deal in a very stealth way. It's very stealthy, right? Because we don't see a lot of reporting on this. But Jeffrey Sachs is involved. He goes to UN meetings. He listens, he engages. This is his wheelhouse. So he's way more informed on this than most people really are, to be honest. So that's what's going on with the peace deal. What was advertised early this week is not what the actual peace deal that Hamas is currently reviewing says. So how was the original peace deal, which Arab leaders agreed to, revised? What changed? Well, you're gonna get a little taste of that in this next clip.
The way that this agreement is written is that Israel keeps its security control over Gaza. In other words, Gaza remains under Israel's dominance, which is Netanyahu's whole point.
Here's Prime Minister Netanyahu speaking in Hebrew immediately upon his return from Washington to Tel Aviv.
Everyone kept saying you have to accept Hamas's terms to withdraw everyone. The IDF needs to withdraw and Hamas can recover and also rehabilitate the strip. No way, that's not happening. On the contrary. And President Trump added that if Hamas refuses, he will give Israel full backing to complete the military operation to eliminate it.
So make no mistake about it. This is all a way of setting up Hamas to reject a deal which does not in any way move toward Palestinian statehood, and in fact would allow for the IDF to continue occupying both the West Bank and the Gaza Strip. They're gonna reject it, and when they do reject that, they're going to be used as the excuse, or that rejection is going to be used as an excuse to annihilate the Palestinians in the Gaza Strip. That's what this is, it's a setup. And it's just so utterly gross and honestly reminiscent of what's been happening in other peace deals, even the Oslo Accords. All this stuff that's been going down for the last several decades, the negotiations and the deals and the terms of these deals are never in good faith. And the way that the history books are written makes it appear as though, the Palestinians are the bad guys. They're the ones who reject everything. But what have they actually been offered, historically speaking? And that brings us back to Noah Smith, because I am curious. Is he just ignorant of this? Or is he stupid? Or is he a liar? I don't know. But to say that people who are concerned about the well-being of innocent civilians in Gaza want more slaughter is so disgusting and so bad faith. Maybe stick to writing your economic articles over at Substack. If you don't understand what's actually going down here, then maybe don't opine about it. But if you're gonna opine about it, and you're gonna keep spreading these just like misleading, honestly defamatory statements about people, well then it's gonna be clear to me that you're just lying and spreading propaganda on behalf of a government that's currently carrying out what genocide scholars and the UN have referred to as a genocide. And I'm just sick of it. I'm sick of the gaslighting. I can't take it anymore.